Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast, where we're in the thick of the jump season now. We're going to an extremely exciting time of the season where a lot of horses are getting unleashed, and this rain has really helped the ground. We've gone from walkovers to having race meetings called off because of waterlog, but it looks like we've got a really, really decent national hump ground for a good-looking fixture at Cheltenham this weekend, which we will be previewing. Just a reminder that we had a jumps preview podcast that went out earlier this week, the ultimate jumps preview podcast, as Dan Overall joined myself, Tom Collins and Ross Millar to cover all the main championship divisions. And there are even a couple of horses that we touched upon that will be appearing out over the next couple of weeks, so well worth your time listening to. But we are going to focus on the main races from this weekend as our order of play this week, and it is the Paddy Power Gold Cup, and it is really the first of a series of these 2.5 mile handicap chases at Cheltenham, which we get our teeth into over the course of the season. So we've got a lot of horses that we're very familiar with returning to the track that they love, not least the admirable Cool Cody, who returns to his happy hunting ground. But this race at the moment, from a betting perspective, is shaped by French Dynamite from Miles Morris and Dara O'Keefe, with odds around about 4-1 at present. The Irish don't have a great record in this race, but they do send over a flurry of horses to Cheltenham this weekend. Go Law is at 6-1, Il Ridotto 7-1, as well as Stolen Silver. Galahad Quest is 10-1. Midnight River is 12-1. Edited Geet 14, as is Happy Go Lucky and Mr. Fisher and Umbrigado, and 20-1 for the Cheltenham hero that is Cool Cody. So there's good value in around here for some horses that love it at Cheltenham. But I've got to start with Tom Collins first, because a horse, and not to give away too much from the ultimate jumps preview, but a horse that you are really excited about seeing this season lines up in Il Ridotto. So how do you think he'll fare in this lineup?
Yeah, so he's my dark horse in the 2022 Ultimate Jumps Guide. As you say, don't want to give away too much, but I'm basically going to give away a lot here with the dark horse, because it's kind of my case for why I think he's got a great chance in Cheltenham's feature on Saturday. Now, whether this will be the race that I think he's going to perform at his best in this year, I don't know, because he's coming off a 224-day layoff. He's had a wind up. There are reasons to believe that maybe he's not going to be 100% ready. But what I will say is I think he's extremely well handicapped off a mark of 140. And if he can produce anything like his best, whether he's 90%, 95% ready to go, I think he's got a fantastic chance. Maybe he goes off around 10-1 as well, which will be a good each way price. So the reason why I like him, other than the fact that his profile is really good, Paul Nicholls obviously striking at 46% in the last 2 weeks. His horses are flying. Is the fact that this horse showed plenty last year. He was just a 4-year-old when he joined Nicholls from France. First time up, he needed to run behind Warlord, but Warlord's a good horse, albeit he didn't show it on his seasonal reappearance this year. Second time at Newbury, he got pace up front, pace to chase in his race. It allowed him to settle. And when he settled, he produced a real sparkling display. Now, that came off a mark of 131. He beat a horse called Numitor, who's very good, especially around Newbury. But he did it in the style of a horse who could be contesting grade 3 or grade 2 level later in his career. Obviously, he was just a 4-year-old last season. So this was a horse who was just a shell of what he's going to be. Then he had a couple of interesting performances in races I don't really think he should have been running in, including the Grand Annual at the Cheltenham Festival. That effort that day was the most eye-catching performance, in my opinion, of the 2022 Cheltenham Festival. I thought it was supremely eye-catching. He moved into the race down the hill in atrocious conditions. He was the only horse actually from the rear that actually made a move into that race. He flattened out late on, but I think the ground took its toll. Last time out, he just didn't show his best. I think he was over the hill. So Il Ridotto, if he can bounce back to anything like his early season form at Newbury last year, or even that Cheltenham run in March, I think he's got a phenomenal chance of a mark of 140 here.
Yeah, the mark is what I was going to touch on, because he was dropped a pound after that run at Ayr, and since his peak of 143, he's now down to this mark of 140. And with the likes of Mr. Fisher in this race, sort of making it a lot easier, you know, Mr. Fisher with a mark of 156, a rating of 140, and the weight that Il Ridotto has is quite favourable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very favourable. Only 10 stone 12 on his back. Harry Cobden takes the ride. you've got other very good horses in here. We can't forget that this isn't going to be a cakewalk for him. As confident as I am that he's going to run well, the likes of Stolen Silver is a great jumper. Gar Law showed promise on his reappearance after a long layoff. But at the same time, he just stands out to me like a sore thumb in this field. He is that horse that has that potential to improve into a horse that's much better than this level. French Dynamite, people may confuse him with Il Rodotto as the horse that has the biggest ceiling. But at the same time, like, Il Rodotto is more than double the price of French Dynamite. Well, I imagine he will be at the off. So I have to take Paul Nicholls' runner in this race.
Okay, right. Il Rodotto, confidence behind Tom Collins's dark horse for the season. Might not be so dark after this weekend if he does perform to the way that Tom is hoping him to. He does have a very nice profile for this. And Ross, it is a case of a good few of these that could be bordering on grade level. And we've actually seen plenty of them, including the favourite French Dynamite, perform at grade 3 level when he won the Pierce Maloney Novices Chase back at Thurles in March. But the Irish don't have a great record in this race, although he must be a standout profile wise. But as Tom has touched on, there are horses in here that are making the most of a handicap mark, which their trainers probably think they're better than.
Yeah, I mean, French Dynamite, you have to respect these Irish horses coming into handicaps, and he's only got £1, as I call it, Irish tax that the UK handicap has given him, and I would think probably par is normally £3 or £4. But all of his best form comes on right-handed tracks. He's only won once going left-handed, and that was when 1-7 on. So I could find enough reason to take him on. Whether he's going to have enough boot round here as well, because we're on the old course. His ride's a little bit sharper. He's got plenty of form at sort of 2 mile 5 plus. So at the prices I could take him on. I mean, it wouldn't be a surprising winner, but I'm happy to take him on. Normally I look at these handicaps, and I love these 2.5 mile handicaps around Cheltenham. Normally I look at one and there's something that really stands out. I think this is really tricky. Really tricky. I could make a case for plenty. I mean, I think TC's hit on it. I mean, Il Rodotto, Paul Nicholls is very confident these horses are going to take a big step forward from 4 into their 5-year-old season and on the back of a Windop. But I think you are putting a lot of hope on that Windop. Cool Cody, time and time again last year, I found myself saying, oh, he's on an increased mark and it's probably going to find him out. And he just kept finding it more. But he is £6 higher now than when winning at the festival. I think that is probably going to stop him. Galahad Quest is interesting. You know, he's only £2 above his last winning mark, but I worry about his jumping in a big field handicap. He normally makes one mistake that gets him on the back foot. I mean, even Mr. Fisher and Simply the Bets, I could make a case for them. I mean, Mr. Fisher has got David Maxwell, who claims 3. So he's technically weighted to reverse form with Stolen Silver. They're going to go hunter chasing with him later in the season. So they're not trying to make, I think, a move on his mark. It's just whether he's ready first time out. And the concern that put me off was that David Maxwell's only had 12 rides this season, 1 in the last 14 days. As an out-and-out amateur, I think he does need a volume of rides sometimes to really sort of get to his mark. Mr. Fisher, I think, will love the ground. He's off a mark of 156, having been rated 160, and that mark of 160 looks fair, given it was when he sort of went to that mark when beating Eldorado Allen, who's a solid 160. I think he's rated 162 now. Could make a chance for him, but I think he struggles to win first term out. Probably got an eye on the Peterborough Trace. So the one I came down on was Galore, and I really love him. I thought he's a super jumper, and jumping will be at a premium round here. I think he can be ridden fairly prominently. My concern is that having run so well in the old Roan Chase off a 600 plus day layoff, there is that lurking, niggling doubt that they can bounce, which is when they inexplicably run badly on their next start after running well on a first start after a long break. But he's still on a mark of 142, very progressive. He's got some super form in grade 3 and grade 2 novice chases. Jamie Snowden's going really well. 4 winners from 14 runners in the last 14 days. 4 others have finished in runner-up. Jumped beautifully Jonathan Burke last time. I think he's probably the most progressive horse in this field. I think there's plenty more in his mark. I'm certainly be better than 142 eventually. And so with a slight reservation about this dreaded bounce factor, I think he's a really interesting horse. Skinny enough price for me, 6-1 in the big field handicap, but I could find holes in plenty of others, so he's the one for me.
Yeah, he's got an interesting profile compared to some of the others who are slightly exposed. You don't really know where he's at. He's obviously highly regarded. If you go back to his novice chasing days when he won the Rising Star race at Wincanton and bolted up beating Hurricane Harvey, obviously just a 3-runner of there. He's never contested in a big deep field handicap. That's the only thing I would worry about him. He's not been tried in a race like this, and bar the old Rowan Chase last time out, which is only 8 runners. It's been sort of very easy for him. So this is a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it?
It is. What I liked about the old Roan was that Millar's Bank lost Keelan Woods at the first, and then made a right nuisance of himself for about the first circuit of the track, jumping across others. And Galore definitely got unsighted at a number of fences and had a far from smooth passage on the first circuit. He was down on the inner. Second circuit, Jonathan Burke moved a bit more outside and gave him some more light, but he coped really well with the loose horse jumping across him. He didn't seem to get distracted. 8 runners, yeah, okay, you're going to have a few more here now, but I think he's a pretty composed jumper, and I liked how he measured his fences and jumped really low and slick. So yeah, that is a concern, but at some point he's going to have to step into these handicaps, and I guess we'll know more on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, another aspect is obviously don't know how he's going to act around Cheltenham, which is the one thing that I would credit. You've got, the horses that have been there, done that is a positive when looking to try and work out these races. But Galore for Ross for a yard that's going really well, as you say, Jamie Snowden. I'm also going to follow in a yard that's going really well in terms of the start to their season. That's the Sam Thomas yard. I think Stolen Silver might go off shorter than around about 7-1 that he is at the moment, because his record at Cheltenham speaks for itself. The last 3 times he's appeared there, he was a winner at the April meeting. He was 4th behind Cool Cody in the plate. He was a good second back over a shorter trip than this at the same November meeting last season. And I just think he's really steadily progressive. He's getting quite high in the handicap now with a mark of 150. So he's one that's definitely, and that's based on the fact that he's won a grade 2 at Cheltenham. So back in handicap company, interesting, but I think he's one that really relishes these tests. He's a brilliant jumper. Love the way that he jumps a fence. Sam Twiston-Davis gets a really good tune out of him as well. And I think this could be one of the last times we probably see him in this type of race, because he will be, if he runs well on fresh back after a break, he'll have to be in better races than this. So I like his profile. So Stolen Silver for me, Il Rodotto for Tom, and Galore for Ross, in what is a really good field to the Paddy Power Gold Cup chase. Got quality horses, and that's to be said throughout the course of the weekend. As I said, I think everyone's relieved that the tracks have had proper rain, haven't need to worry about watering. It's a fishy at the moment, good to soft. I don't think there's a huge amount of rain due, but let's hope that they can maintain it. But we do have 3 days of quality action. Obviously got the Greatwood on Sunday, got the Schlur Chase. So plenty of options for our team to pick from in terms of our best bets. But obviously there's racing throughout the weekend. There's even some flat racing if we want to dip into that as well. But I'll come to TC first and get your best bet from the whole weekend.
Yeah, so my best bet is going to be over jumps. I will come to flat racing in due course. The 12:43 at Wetherby. Only 5 runners go to post in this novice limited handicap chase, but all 5 runners have a good chance of winning. Marico De Vassi, who I think Ross likes, makes his reappearance. Manila Plus looks for a hat trick. The consistent Nero Rock is in there, and Laura Morgan's got one as well. So the field is pretty strong. But the horse I really like is Zacconi Rebel. This is the 12:43 at Wetherby as well, I'll just reiterate. Now, he made a winning chase debut at Fontwell a couple of weeks back, and it was a really good effort. That day, I put him straight in my tracker because the way he jumped looked like he'd be doing this. He's been jumping fences for years, but actually, obviously, it was his first run over the bigger obstacles. Now, last year, he had a few runs in novice hurdles, and he performed very well against some good opposition. He's rated 129 over fences, which I think is extremely lenient. Toby Laws has made a great start to his training career. Now, people don't necessarily associate Toby Laws with having good horses, and he doesn't have the best of strings right now. But I think Zacconi Rebel could become that top horse for him. And off a mark of 129, I just have to back him. Toby Laws is 29% so far with his runners this year as well. So if Zacconi Rebel can jump as well as he did on chase debut at Fontwell, I think he can jump these rivals into the ground and win the 12:43 at Wetherby.
Okay, thanks, Tom. That's a really interesting position there for Zacconi Rebel. Looks like he has a cracking chance in the 12:43 at Wetherby, as you say. Ross, are you at Wetherby or any other jump track over the course of the weekend?
I've gone to Wetherby for the 153. Always frustrating when they got these odd times. The 153, and the horse I like is Defi Sacra. Richard Hobson trained. I mentioned on the Ultimate Jumps preview podcast that you can put a line through all of Richard Hobson's form last year. He just couldn't get his horses right. And I think 5 runs Defi Sacra had last year, 2 in France and 3 in the UK, tells you everything you need to know about how difficult Richard Hobson was finding it to get his horses right, because previously he'd run 10 times, 12 times a season. Thankfully, he's dropped from a mark of 129 down to a mark of 117. Still only a 9-year-old, so there's legs in the old boy yet, I think. Well suited by a flat left-handed track. He's got very good form around Newbury, including a couple of wins. Brian Hughes is a really eye-catching booking, I think. Richard Hobson's horses have been running really well lately. Rise on the Storm actually was second in the Old Roan that we mentioned after a mammoth layoff. So I think dropping down the weights, 10 stone 10 on his back, I can see Defi Sacra going really well in the 153 at Wetherby.
Okay, yes, yeah, that more acknowledgement to the Ultimate Jumps preview podcast where, yeah, as you say, that was mentioned about the Richard Hobson team. So yeah, let's hope that he can have a cleaner run of things this time round, and your selection helps you out there as well. For me, I am going to the Amateur Jockeys Handicap Chase at Cheltenham on Saturday, the 110, and A Night in Lambourne, the mare, she ran an absolute blinder in a lesser version of this, a 0 to 125 version of an amateur handicap chase at Cheltenham last time, where a blunder at the last meant that she wasn't able to go and win it. But she's up a fair few pounds and now is in a tougher version of this race. It's 0 to 140, so she's going to have to improve again, but she's actually at the weights, it's still an advantage. There are plenty of horses that are helping her weight in here. She has got Jack Andrews on board, who is a very capable and talented rider. And we've talked about plenty of yards that have got off the ground running this season. And the Ben Pauling team are just absolutely flying. You look through their set of results and nothing has appeared out of the placings going back the last couple of weeks. So that just goes to bode well for how their horses will do this weekend. They've got horses everywhere. They've got plenty at Cheltenham. And I hope A Night in Lambourne can continue on their good vein of form on Saturday in the 110. So those are our best bets, as we always do. We've got some place selections as well. And TC, you found something for us on the flat.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the listed Golden Rose Stakes at Lingford. It's the 2:35 on Saturday. 11 runners set to line up. It's a fast track qualifier. There are some good horses in here as well. But I really like Exalted Angel for a place. Now, I don't really know what price he's going to be. I presume he's going to be quite big, given he's got around £15 to find with the likes of Harry's Bar, Logo Hunter, Summergand, etc. I think he's got £6 to find with Judicial as well, who's got a good record in this race. But Exalted Angel remains open to loads of improvement, especially on the all-weather. And I really expect him to take a big leap forward from his recent reappearance run at York last month, where it was quite clearly just a pipe opener. It was a stiff task to put him back in that race after a long layoff, given they've obviously got an all-weather campaign in mind over the winter. So I think that was just to blow away the cobwebs. I expect a huge leap forward. And not only is this horse open to more improvement, but he's already shown a good level of form on the all-weather at Lingfield in listed company. He won the Catchy Stakes back in early 2021 in really good time, and it was a good performance visually as well. So I think if he can bounce back to something like that level, then he's got a fantastic chance of winning this race, let alone placing. And I say presume because I could be wrong here, that he's going to be a double figure price. So Exalted Angel in the 2:35 at Lingfield.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Bit of flat action to keep the flat enthusiasts interested. Ross, what's your place selection, please?
I've gone back to the home and jumping Cheltenham for the 2:55, the 3-mile handicap hurdle. And a horse I really like is Fontana Elisi. Runs here off just 10 stone 2, having been put up £2. Finished a really eye-catching second over 2.5 miles at this course behind Seddon. Was ridden really cold out the back on that occasion and was probably given quite a bit to do. and absolutely flew up the hill. I've been desperate to see this horse over 3 miles. It's been pretty keen over 2 earlier in its career. It's started to settle quite nicely now for Sam Drinkwater team. I think he's really well handicapped. Robbie Dunn takes the ride. He said when he came back from his suspension, he was going to let his riding do the talking, and I think he certainly has. He's not had an awful lot of winners in the last 14 days, but he's really struck me. He's riding very well. Horses are jumping beautifully for him, as they often have throughout his career. I think can go well at about 12-1.
Yeah, I think that's a good field, that race. Really intriguing there, and yeah, as you say, I was impressed by the way that horse stayed on strongly. So intriguing. At 3 miles for the Sam Drinkwater team, Fontana Elise. I am going to go back to the Paddy Power Gold Cup for my selection for a place play, and the place play selection is Happy Go Lucky. Sees the return of this son of Jeremy, but for the Kim Bailey team, he had a minor tender injury last season, which ruled him out. But he is a horse with huge amount of talent. Seen by the way that he ran at Cheltenham at the festival. He was beaten second by Vintage Clouds, but ran an absolute blinder as a novice in that race. And as I said, it's a shame that he was ruled out of last season with that tendon injury. So that's the reason why he'll be, I'd imagine, a double figure price around 14-1, because he's likely potentially to need the run. But going back on his form, which isn't a huge amount to go on because he hasn't done a huge amount of racing for an 8-year-old, only ran the 9 times. He has gone well fresh after a break. He just loves it around Cheltenham. His record speaks for itself. He's won there and placed on 2 occasions too. And I think that he deserves to run a good race here and come on from this as well. So I'd like to see him show up for Kim Bailey and David Bass on board. So that's in the Paddy Power Gold Cup. So looking forward to that race indeed. As we mentioned, the Sir Chase and the Greatwood Hurdle also on Sunday. So there's plenty of action over the course of 3 days for you to get your teeth into. We, as always, have an opportunity now to go back to Tom and get his stat attack for the weekend. Why have you gone to? What have you found for us?
Yeah, well, throughout the flat season, I kind of realised I was focusing these stat attacks on some of the leading names, your Jonathan Gosdens, your William Haggas, your Frankie Dettori. So I thought during the jump season, let's go for some names that aren't necessarily as well known, because, we could always talk about incredible strike rates of Paul Nicholls, Nicky Henderson, etc. So I'm going to bring up Anne Hamilton. Now, I know Ross has brought up this stat before, but in 2020 and 2021 combined, Anne Hamilton boasted a 36% strike rate for a near £50 profit to £1 level stakes with their horses. Just a phenomenal couple of years with a small string, but a talented string. Now, this year hasn't started in the same way. She's just 1 from 8. But I think maybe her horses have needed a run more than usual. The only actual winner so far this year has been Tommy's Oscar. Now, Tommy's Oscar is the horse that this stat attack relates to, because he runs in the Arkle trial at Cheltenham on Saturday, the 145. He had his first run this year. He won, albeit in a very weak and small field. But now he bounces back into this bigger, more competitive heat. And Hamilton hasn't had many runners at Cheltenham, just 2 in her career. So this will be an interesting spot, and let's see if Anne Hamilton can rack up another winner.
Okay, thanks for that. Tommy's Oscar, worth following in as part of TC's Stat Attack. That comes to the end of our podcast this week, previewing the Paddy Power Gold Cup. It's just definitely worth watching. Just what a really good competitive race that we've got to look forward to. But we've also given you a bet of the week, a place play, and plenty for you to go home and think about. A reminder that new SBK customers can get £30 in free bets by betting £10. Remember to take a go back to the Ultimate Jumps preview podcast on whatever podcast streaming service you listen to. You can also watch it on YouTube as well, and there is plenty more content to be found on our YouTube channel, as well as SBK Ambassador content. And we hope that you've enjoyed. As always, remember to like and subscribe. We'll be back again with you next week. Have a wonderful weekend.